Everyone, I'm Alicia Espy. I'm the program director for the Downtown Davenport Partnership. It's great to have you here with us today. Sorry that we're not in person and eating bacon at the Black Hawk, but this will have to do. So today's meeting will be recorded and we'll make it available on our website and social media pages. Just one housekeeping item. A lot of you submitted questions in advance, but if at any time throughout the program there's a Q&A box at the bottom center of your screen, you can click that, type in your question, and we're going to try to get to as many of your questions at the end of this. We'll bring on all the DDP staff and just try to have a conversation at the end. So now to kick things off, I'm going to hand it on over to Mike Poster.
All right, well, thank you, Alicia. I want to welcome everybody to our 2020 Downtown Davenport Partnership Annual Meeting. My name is Mike Poster. I've had the privilege over the last 12 months to chair the Downtown Davenport Partnership Board. I'm the Vice President for Finance at St. Ambrose University, and I've been on the DDP board for the last 10 years. I'll admit, when I started in this role a little over 12 months ago, I really thought that my tenure was going to be a lot easier than my predecessor. She had to deal with the flood in April 2019 and all the challenges that it brought with it. I figured the latter part of 2019, the first 6 months of 2020, we would rebuild downtown Davenport, at least the areas that were impacted, and get downtown Davenport back on its feet. Little did I realize that in 2020, we would be dealing with a worldwide pandemic, and downtown Davenport business would literally be brought to a standstill. However, throughout these last 3 months, I could not have been prouder of our DDP staff. They immediately went to work calling businesses and assisting in any way they could in navigating the paperwork, the complexity of applying for federal and state aid. I can't speak for everybody, but I know that dealing with this pandemic will certainly be one of the greatest challenges that I'll have to deal with. But I want everybody to know that you do not need to face it alone. Our DDP staff will always be here to help you and assist you in any way that we can. So before I kick it over to Kyle for the rest of the presentation, I would like to acknowledge our Board of Trustees for this last year. And you can see their names here. I would particularly like to mention those who are highlighted in yellow. Those are our outgoing board members. Dana Wilkinson has been on this board for the last 20 years. She joined in the year 2000. Janie Behall, just a little bit less, joined in 2002. Rick Palmer, 2006. Ken Crokin in 2007. Candy Pasternak in 2009. And John Rule in 2014. So I want to thank those 6 individuals for their time and commitment to downtown Davenport, and I want to thank our board for everybody on the board for their dedication and passion for downtown Davenport. And with that, Kyle, I'll turn it over to you for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Mike. I can't say how much I appreciate this board and how hard it's worked throughout my entire career, let alone the last couple of years. So thank you for your commitment, and thank you for a great year of being chair, Mike. For those who don't know me, I'm Kyle Carter. I'm the executive director here at the Downtown Davenport Partnership, which is a division of the Quad Cities Chamber of Commerce. I want to start right off the bat echoing what Mike had to say, which is this is an extraordinarily resilient group of people. It is not lost on me or our colleagues here in the office just how much suffering has happened over the last 2 years. Between the flood and the pandemic, I know there are people on the edge of their chair every day wondering, are we going to make it? What's the next bend going to be? How much more, can we take? But it's a friendly reminder too that, there was a pandemic in 1918. There was a farm crisis in the 80s. There have been numerous crises over the years, not to mention floods, that this community and this downtown and the people who make it up have always stood up and been able to move forward. And I have no doubt that at the end of the day, we will be able to overcome this and move forward. But wanted to take a moment to appreciate just how hard everyone's been sweating lately. And being in the trenches with you guys is something that we don't take for granted. So on that note, we have a lot to cover today because there is some good news, and quite a bit of it actually. We're first going to kind of go over the organizational overview a recap of the last year since last June, a detailed in-depth discussion about COVID response specifically later in the presentation, and then getting into our long-term master plan that we're in the process of creating. It's been so much chaos over the last year, 2 years, that there's been a lot of good news that's been overlooked. So we're gonna dive into some things that I hope make you feel a little bit better, feel a little bit prouder, and give you some hope for what's still happening and what's around the corner. But first, I want to revisit who we are. We're kind of using new language to describe what it is and what we do, in that our organization is really about place management and placemaking. And I'll get into that more in just a little bit, but just a friendly reminder that the reason we're all here is that the property owners of this downtown pay into the self-supporting municipal improvement district, which is better known as a business improvement district all over the country, but we have an odd term for it here in Iowa. And that we live inside the chamber umbrella, so that gives us a whole lot of other resources we wouldn't otherwise have, and gives us a regional focus on what we do as well. And so that team together looks at these three big buckets of work. So what is place management, and where did that term come from? Well, on a national scale, we visited Baltimore last year for the Downtown International meeting, and our eyes were opened, I think, to a little bit about this industry. Business and economic growth, infrastructure and livability, and advocacy and promotion are the three major buckets of what we work on. So if you look at that list, there's a huge swath of work we do. Everything from flower baskets to strategic planning, direct financial assistance and grants, business promotion, riverfront advocacy, complete streets initiatives. It's a massive amount of scope that we are involved in. But wanted you guys to understand that this is what we do and how we serve you, and we continue to refine that and try to be better every day. Geographically, here is the two different zones of the taxing district that we represent, basically from Brown Street over about to the Quad City Times and the new YMCA, and up just past the railroad with a few wonky borders along the way. So that's more of a recap and a reminder, because I think some folks don't realize what our geography really is. So before I go any further, I want to take a moment to thank the staff around here. So beyond our Quad Cities Chamber large 30+ staff, we have the direct department folks, Alicia, Jason, and Tony, that have just absolutely busted their butts over the last couple of years to help in any way we could in this downtown. I could not do my job without them. This organization spins because of the work that they do, and I can't say enough about the quality and the quantity of work that these folks put out every day. So we'll get more into their worlds of work here shortly, and also have a chance to talk to them at the end. So financially this year, we had about a $1.4 million income. That's up slightly because of some of the chamber contributions, grant contributions. Some of that's just accounting, but as a whole, that's a little higher than where we're normally sitting. As of expenses, the reason that we're up over income this year is a result of the flood grants from last year. We output a whole big chunk of cash to help. That was over $200,000 out of our SMID bucket. We raised another $200,000 with the help of the larger family here of the community to have $400,000 in flood grants last year that went out. And as you'll see from our capital budget, this is the stuff. These are the physical things that we actually produced last year. And this isn't even a total picture in the sense that this is just what was expended, literally checks out the door. There's other dollars for facade improvements, interior improvements, and grants that are allocated but just haven't been spent yet on projects that just aren't done. So as you can see, we did an enormous amount of flood relief, other improvements, and we continue to invest in this infrastructure downtown, and more on that later. From an overall investment perspective, we had over $7.5 million in large and small projects this past year. A huge $48 million under construction or about to become under construction, and over $70 million in projects that are planned. Planned meaning they've been announced, they're public information, they are being financed still, they're being worked on, they may or may not happen, but have likelihood of happening. And then a friendly reminder that as horrible as the last couple of years have been, that we've had over $600 million, and I think that's conservative, frankly, invested over the last 20-year window down here. That's really mostly large-scale projects, and there's a lot of small stuff that I think would boost that number even higher. But never forget just how far this downtown and this community has come. there are many people who 20 years ago would have never dreamed that we'd see this level of investment, and that's because of the folks that are on this call making it happen. So before I go any further, I mentioned the flood a couple of times. I think the context of everything we discuss going forward has to be under the umbrella of knowing that we are dealing still with the mighty Mississippi. One of my favorite pieces of news is that the city of Davenport just hired their engineering firm, HR Green, to do the whole floodplain study. And there's been a lot of questions about what are we doing? What's next? Well, it's going to be a phased project that includes public engagement leading to engineering solutions for each specific corridor. So we've got 9 miles of riverfront. The city and this engineering firm is going to have to break that up into chunks, downtown being one of them, and look at specifically what infrastructure is necessary for us to protect our assets going forward. Is it more permanent protection? Is that some sort of wall in some portion of the riverfront? A lot of people forget that infrastructure is underground. We may need a different kind of sewer system. There may be temporary stuff like HESCOs that are continually used because they are the best idea in some corridors. So it's going to be a big mix of solutions. There is no one silver bullet to this. I repeat, there is no singular solution to flood issues in this city. There will be many different ways in which this gets approached, and this engineering study was crucial to answer those questions, let alone what we do at the regional level in the other cities, which I'll touch on later. So also the master plan that we're currently working on that we'll discuss at the end of the meeting will reflect the fact that we have pending results on this still, and we need to remain flexible on what the results of this really are. And of course, the Corps of Engineers came out last year and gave very specific direction to the city of Davenport on how they felt the HESCOs could be best utilized and most likely be able to stick around when things get really hairy down here. And the city has since implemented those recommendations. We also worked with the city this year a little bit on improving detours. We have some more work to do on making sure that when River Drive is shut down, that we have a more systematic approach to when detours happen, where traffic goes, and how we redirect. And then lastly, just a reminder that last year we dished out over $400,000 in funding for folks all around the region, not just in downtown Davenport, and we're very proud of that. So back to some good news. This last year, over 12 completed projects, big and small. Some of the folks, speaking of flooding, like Abernathy's and Crafty QC rebuilt. The Hibernian Hall building is finally complete and it looks amazing. Actually, that's an older photo there. The streetscape is now done in front of that. Bray Architects opened up. We saw Piggott expand. The Tarot Star and Medics grew immensely with some new office space. So lots of good news there. And of course, on the city side, the Sky Bridge and the Flex Lot on the riverfront also saw upgrades. So other new, retained, expanded, or soon to be returning businesses. You'll see a nice list here, a mix of office, retail, bars, restaurants, a little bit of everybody. I will point out that you'll notice Ragged Records and Trash Can Annie are on here. They're not open yet, but they have publicly announced that they have found a new home downtown and will be reopening. So that's another happy flood story that will resolve soon enough. And then we have a lot of other restaurants and bars, and you see some of the other highlights there. So we're happy to see so much activity after the flood and COVID. Some other pending construction that's going on. The YMCA leads the pack with a over $20 million investment on the east end of downtown that we are very excited about. It's running on schedule. We expect to see that hopefully open maybe even by the end of the year. Our good friends at Great River Brewery have come back like a phoenix from the ashes as Great Revivalist Brewery, and their construction is now moving forward. Mid-American's doing upgrades. The Call building is started to do plaster work and finish up some of their demo before they can move forward. And you'll see a couple buildings like the little green building behind the forest block there is going to become a new breakfast restaurant called Yoked Unimpaired, which is the non-alcoholic bar, which is super cool. Something that should be opening soon. And of course, Kaiserslautern Square, which you'll see there move forward at City Hall recently. And we expect to see a major renovation of a space that desperately needs it. And we're very excited to work with the city. And we raised significant private dollars to help that happen. The city is putting in significant public dollars, and that'll be a wonderful project when it's all said and done. Some of the bigger planned projects. You'll see here in the upper right corner is the Merge project in the green space at the River Center that's moving forward. Those are planned to be micro units, small and more affordable units. The one on the left there you'll see is what's planned to be adjacent to the new YMCA. a large apartment complex that's moving forward. Down on the bottom right is 400 River, which is a project that has been worked on for quite some time. They could have some amazing overviews. And yes, of course, all of these are very aware of the floodplain and how that affects any of these properties. I just want to throw that out there before somebody asks. And then, of course, bowstring loss in the bottom left there on the west end at 2nd and Western, and a patio that Ruby's is planning here in the near future. So lots of exciting new construction still on the horizon. And despite all the challenges of COVID, these projects are still moving forward right now. Some other things that we helped leverage via DDP specifically, we have our facade grants. You'll see a building there at Ripley Street at 509 Ripley that has long since needed help. Some developers there, some local guys have been doing some wonderful work rehabbing those properties, and those should be some great affordable units when they're done. And you'll see here some of the interior improvements that we helped with, Medics and others, just some beautiful new office space downtown, and also some commercial spaces that were helped to be rehabbed. And you'll see that leverage private investment there. Moving into the housing realm, we still have just over 1,500 units total downtown. That's market rate and low income or senior total together. We did another housing study this year, and while the flood definitely took the wind out of our sails, our occupancy is still quite high. We're doing well for a market our size, just considering the last 2 years that we've been dealing with natural disasters, et cetera. We are in a more competitive phase, but the study clearly showed that there's still market rate demand as long as the projects meet particular criteria. That means the way that they're designed, the type of rooms that they have, the way that they approach parking, the amenities that they provide. So you just can't throw anything up and expect it to just fill up. But if you build it right, you can succeed, and we've shown that. One quick note too, on the bottom there, you'll see a comment about affordable housing in the Quad Cities is still in great need across our entire region. The QC Housing Cluster is doing a great job assessing that issue and educating us on how much further we yet have to go. And we have continued to support Humility of Mary in the winter shelter over the last year, and expect to see more of that going forward. Homelessness issues, shelter issues, there's lots of equity issues that need to be addressed. We are well aware of that, but we'll be working with community partners to make sure that we're at the table for those discussions. Our full housing study is available on our website as well. So that's a good transition to remind ourselves that we live in a neighborhood here. And our operations crew, led by Tony and our guys that are out on the street every day that I'm sure you've seen, are constantly watering flower baskets, picking up trash, etc. But this year, I'm extraordinarily excited to announce that for the first time in history, we have a formal agreement with the City of Davenport for Downtown Partnership to become the facilitator for almost all regular downtown maintenance. So while we've always had an assist role, now we'll be the driver in the driver's seat of this 7 days a week. We're going to be adding about 40 trash cans, doing daily 7-day-a-week trash pickup of those cans, cleaning the parking ramps daily, cleaning the Skybridge daily, pocket park maintenance like K Square and Bechtel Park, and then some ad hoc work when there are parades and things that are special that need a little extra attention. I can't thank the guys enough. Tony and his whole team really work hard to make sure that they keep this place looking good every day. And if you see issues that need to be dealt with and something is not quite right, make sure you let Tony and our team know so that we can address it. But very proud of the work that they have, very excited about the partnership we have with the city to expand that role and really step up our game and raise the bar of the quality of service for what our good folks pay for down here. And I think we can do better, and we're about to. Related to that are complete streets issues as a whole. These are the infrastructure issues that we have had systemic problems with for years that I am very thrilled to say that over the course of almost 10 years, we have slowly chipped away to fix these systems that have been broken. And I think you're starting to see the ramifications of all that work. You'll see in the past what we had been getting through City Hall and working with the city to fix some of the background ordinance issues and policies that were dated and no longer servicing us well. As a result of addressing all those things, you're now starting to see streetscape like at 4th and Brady pop. We're planning more at 2nd Street. There's more on 3rd and Main and other streets that are planned We have a budget now where the DDP has skin in the game, the property owner has skin in the game, the city has skin in the game, and we're also even addressing the electrical grid under the ground that's been a huge problem where the private property owners were paying for public lighting, which has safety and all kinds of other issues tied with it. And we're in the process now of not only just planning to fix that, but executing and beginning to budget actual construction to fix that policy. We also we created a new vault policy and had a parking study completed this year in coordination with City Hall that were also both very successful and helpful. So huge progress on this year, despite everything we've been through. One complete streets issue that has been near and dear to my heart, as many of you know, is the two-way streets returning to 3rd and 4th as they were historically. This is critical infrastructure for our future. I'm thrilled to say that this improvement is now budgeted in the city CIP budget for FY 22-23. DDP has committed over $70,000 a year for 9 or 10 years for the length of that bond debt. The city is also obviously at the table for this. And the why behind this continues to be more and more important. The YMCA is a great example of why that corridor needs to be addressed all the way down to the west end as well. You know, it's not a highway. Downtown wasn't built so you could drive 90 through it. There are all kinds of safety issues that this addresses. We're going to have the boats landing at the park just east of the Quad City Times. Once those boats start landing and more tourists get here, we need a more friendly way to get around that's less confusing for visitors. There's a litany of reasons, from safety to retail sales to just the economic benefits of this. There's a reason we've worked so hard, so long for this, and I can't wait to see the work come out of this. And we'll talk more about this when we get closer to the actual construction of it. But flooding is one more reason why, when River Drive is cut off, how we need better paths to get around down here that are more efficient, more flexible than what we have right now. So more on that later, but very happy about the progress we've made there. So speaking of city government, state, local, we've had a very busy year on the advocacy front. We helped adjust our SMID funding as a result of COVID. We have the new city services agreement. We mentioned a couple of the other policies that are in there: outdoor dining and curbside policy that the city has worked on with us, the regional opportunity zone. And then, of course, at the state and federal level, COVID financial assistance, trying to make sure that we turn over every rock we can to find more dollars for our businesses to help. And we have another National Historic District on the way, and we also created a SMID network across the entire state with our friends in Iowa City. Nancy Bird over there is the Iowa City equivalent of my role, and she and I have worked very hard to connect all of our business improvement districts around the state this year, which was super cool and had some great results at the state level when it came to advocacy. So into the communications and marketing realm, we have great numbers. You know, Alicia and the Quad Cities Chamber team, led by Jennifer, a communications team, do tons of work every day to make sure we're getting the message out there. And this is a lot of work between our website and all our social media work. But we also had a big multi-layered campaign after the flood this year. On Media and the Quad City Times donated an enormous amount of TV advertising for free to our downtown business community. I hope you saw all 3 of these ads. I think they're spectacular. We will run them again at some point, and when that day makes sense, I think you'll see these again. But we will continue to get the word out and try and send people down here as much as possible. And while our events may have been canceled for the year due to COVID, not all of them, but most of them, we did have a successful year last year. Red, White, and Boom, Ice Extravaganza, Street Fest, Alternating Currents were fun, and hopefully we can get back to that again soon. But the one event we are still planning to have at this point is Alternating Currents, as it's at the end of August, and we're hopeful that things improve enough at that point to continue to do this. We are still planning this. We're booking for this. As you know, this is our celebration of the art and culture and just the whole world of the Quad Cities, and showing off our creative juices, showing off our talent, art, comedy, film, music, all over downtown, over 25 venues. We are excited about this. The good news is these are all very small group events. There is no one giant collection of people necessarily for anything in this event. So we think it functions well with COVID. And as long as things are reasonably under control, we think we can still move forward with this and have a little fun this summer before fall comes. So speaking of COVID, obviously this is the top of everyone's mind. There are 3 phases to this that we're going to deal with: survival, stabilization, long-term recovery. It is not lost on us that most of us still feel like we're in the survival mode. For a minute there, I really felt like we were getting into stabilization, but the truth is I think we have one leg in survival, one leg in stabilization, and that's going to waver back and forth until all this comes to an end someday. But what we've been doing is busting our butts to provide financial assistance, working with the SBA, advocacy for better improvements to the PPP program, which at the federal level did happen. Business resources of all kinds are available on the chamber website. Business promotions to try and make sure that we survive this window of time. The downtown drive-through was very successful. It's something that Alicia helped cook up and I think was executed well. And we also had several downtown businesses who were the first to come up with this idea that we helped then implement on a larger scale. So we have some really creative people that are running these businesses down here, and good ideas come from everywhere. So you'll see some of the examples of the chamber blog that we were updating sometimes 4 times a day at its height, and some of the other events that we've put on, some of the other recovery packages that are out there to help people understand how best to deal with this, how to try and operate your business amid what is obviously chaotic and confusing coming out of whatever you hear on any given day. All we've tried to do is disseminate this information as best we can, provide you the best opportunity to try and stabilize, try and survive, so that someday we eventually get to recovery and growth. So while near term we're going to be looking at constantly creative ways to just get by, eventually we want to see a plan to get out of this and come out of it running. In 3 to 5 years, we want some really aspirational goals to reach to as well, which brings us to our master plan. It had been a long time since we had done a true formal master plan. Last one we did was in 2012, 2013, which we largely worked. And prior to that was 1999. We are working with the city this time in a new way, and our steering committee includes several aldermen. We eventually are going to actually present this to city council in workshop format so that they can take a look at it, beat it up, and adopt it eventually as the formal plan. But right now we're doing the nuts and bolts. And there's some major themes that we're going to be looking at going forward. What is the right blend of a development? The connected riverfront. There are 5 downtowns in this Quad Cities. How does that function as one region? What is downtown Davenport's unique identity in that? How do we be more walkable? And one of the most important things on this list that this plan needs to directly talk to is inclusive growth, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't think it's any secret that we have work to do on those fronts across the board in the Quad Cities and in the country. I don't think I need to go deeply into that for you to all understand how deeply necessary these issues are, whether it's housing equity, whether it's racial equity, whether it's economic equity, inclusion of people who maybe haven't been at the table in the past. All of these things converge in downtown. We are the theater of the community. As downtown goes, so goes the Quad Cities, so goes Davenport. So it's wildly important that we treat downtown as a microcosm of this greater community, because that's exactly what it is. So in those themes, there are some long-term goals that we look to find. Again, that blend of development. How does flooding and the engineering study eventually weave into this? Arts and cultural assets. How do we support the people and the creatives and the makers of this community to enhance this district, emphasize street level activation, create an authentic sense of place that's true to us, true to who we really are? And how does it all end up making you money as a business owner and making our community actually just successful as a whole on every level? So right now we're in the middle of this process, and normally we'd have had a lot more public engagement by now, but COVID has made that extraordinarily difficult. But we're right smack in the middle of this. So we're starting to do some visioning development. We will do public engagement on a greater level. We're starting to do a little bit, and you'll hear about that more in a moment. But we're looking to be done with this in the fall winter time frame for the council to be able to chew on it and ultimately vote on it. So in the meantime, what are we doing to survive? COVID is here. You're like, that's great, Kyle, but what else is going on? How are we going to get there to the other end? So our master planners, WXY, who have been amazing to work with and have really thought from every level on this and continue to, have provided some great ideas for us. You'll see things like the curbside retrofit, which is what Fatsex did at Kilkenny's. curbside showrooms, parklets, pickup zones and delivery zones that become permanent once we tackle some policy and ordinance issues with the city, once we know what we want to do and how we do them. Bike corrals, temporary closures for outdoor dining. If indoor dining becomes too challenging, what are we going to do about it? And how can we help all these businesses that need somewhere to serve their clientele safely? There's so many things in this slide that I love that I think we could implement. It's just a matter of getting some energy behind it, understanding what you want, what you need, and working with the city to make sure we can implement some of this stuff. So on a regional level, though, there's a lot of other challenges beyond what we just do in downtown. We talked about working across borders on the regional housing study, our downtown meetings, statewide network, I-74, in case anybody forgot, we're still building $1 billion bridge in this community that's crucially important for everyone to succeed economically going forward, and flood management discussions that don't just look at downtown Davenport like we're the only one who's got problems around here. Every single city in this region has some element of flooding challenge that we could tackle together and should and must if it's ever going to be fully solved, as to make sure that all these assets we've built along the riverfront can succeed on the level that they need to and should. So your voice is needed in all this. You know, our team lives and breathes this every day, but you do too. And your voice needs to be heard. That part of that master planning is we're going to be doing a survey within the next couple of days. You're going to see that come out. We're going to reiterate it again after the holiday. We need to hear that feedback. We need to hear these voices, particularly voices we don't hear from. There's a lot of folks that live just adjacent to downtown, whether it's north, east, or west, that I wish would engage more often with us, but that's because we haven't done a good enough job reaching out and engaging. And we've learned that that only happens if you reach out and choose to be inclusive, and we have more work to do on that. But please do your part and tell your friends to engage in this process. So as we're getting closer to the Q&A section, I have posted this almost every year for the last 10 years in this slideshow, and I mean it. And it's one of the greatest quotes from any urban planner I've ever seen. Because without a strong and inclusive central heart, a city tends to become a collection of interests, isolated from one another, faltering to produce something greater socially, culturally, economically than the sum of its separated parts. And boy, is 2020 a year to recognize the truth and value of that statement. So please keep that in mind when we talk about investing downtown. We do it because it's your neighborhood, it's our neighborhood, it's the face of the community, it's the face of the city. An investment down here benefits everyone. There is no one in the community that does not benefit when we look at holistically how we make this a better, more welcoming, more successful, busier, more vibrant place for everyone. So that being said, we need to talk. We're going to switch to the Q&A section. I appreciate you listening to me for this long, and we're going to start getting the rest of my staff up here so we can take your questions and answer them as best we can.
All right, thanks, Kyle. So as a reminder, you can type your questions in the Q&A box down below. We did leave an opportunity when you registered for you to ask questions in advance, so I'll go through some of those, but as you come up with questions, just type them in the box. So Kyle, we get asked this, I bet, weekly. When are we getting our downtown Hy-Vee?
Yeah, that's a fair question. So first of all, grocery stores have very slim margins, and so they need large volume to survive. One of the models we've seen that we think our market can sustain is similar to the Hy-Vee Fresh that you've seen that are very, very compact grocery stores that often have gas as well. I think that we could support one of those. I have reached out to that particular organization as well as others to engage their interest in that. One of the knocks that we've had on their willingness to be down here, they being any organization of grocery, not just one in particular, is that the one-ways are seen as a barrier. And I'm happy to say, as we discussed earlier, that we will be getting rid of that issue. There's also been just accessibility in general and questions about that I think we have the right sites right now downtown to finally do it. And so you can rest assured that we are going to work very hard to convince someone to finally pull the trigger on that.
Awesome. So the other thing related, um, I've had this a few times and it just came in twice live. What's going to happen with the old YMCA?
So what's most likely to happen with the old YMCA is that it would be demolished. Part of our master plan will be to look at that whole block. We have some really good ideas brewing right now about both public and private uses of that site. It's a little too early to say specifically what that will be, but we have acknowledged that that is a really key corridor, a very big gateway. So the building is non-functional. While it's old, it's not particularly useful in any kind of rehab. This would be an opportunity for us to really rewrite the playbook for that corridor, and we will be addressing that in our master plan.
So this is complete streets related. So Tony or Kyle, you could tag team this one. But people have heard that there's streetscaping planned for 2nd Street. Is this still happening, and how will it impact the businesses on 2nd?
I'll take the first part of this and pitch part of it to Tony. So we are still planning to do that. We are hoping this fall or next spring to begin construction on the south side of 2nd Street from about Barrel House down to Iowa Street. There are some challenges in the budget as a result of COVID on the city side and DDP side. We need to make sure that we can still afford to do it in this fiscal year. We still plan to. If it gets punted as a result of funding, it would be the following July probably that we get into it, but I remain hopeful that we can still pull that off in this fiscal year. And Tony, I know you've been working really hard on the infrastructure improvements. Do you want to talk a little bit about like the LED lights and some of the stuff you've been tinkering on?
Yeah, sure. We've been working with the City of Davenport in partnership with getting the streetlights upgraded from the older bulb style upgraded to LED. They are DOT approved and project enough the proper lighting to take the place of the older, not as attractive overhead lighting. There's two parts with the lighting right now that we're working with. Like the first one I mentioned was the LED upgrade, and we're a dozen lights shy right now of having that completely taken care of, and that last dozen is getting completed as we speak right now. It'll be a matter of a week or two, or well, maybe a month, that will all be taken care of. Then the second stage coming up will be the electrical conversion to get the lights that are on private property switched over to the public grid. So some of the locations right now, the lights are being ran off of the neighboring property, and those will be taken care of and switched over to the public grid and be maintained and supported by the city at that point.
Yeah, going forward, when the LED upgrade is done, the city will officially be maintaining them going forward. So when you see a light out, we have an actual system in place now to address that quickly. Mm-hmm. Tony and DDP are the eyes and ears of that program, though. So while the city will be doing the actual maintenance, if you see a problem, you should reach out to us. We're happy to be the middleman there in that system and report issues as we see them. So that's something that the LED upgrade required to be able to get that agreement in place with City Hall. And that's something that we're very happy about, and I think will benefit the property, business, and visitors, everybody in the long haul.
It's been a long time coming and a lot of work. So good job, Tony, and your team. So the next question is, are there funds for facade improvements available? And I can give you the short answer, yes, but we've had a lot of projects submitted already. So there's a separate committee, our business R&R committee meets and goes over the grant applications and figures out where funding is going to go. And we have a lot of projects that have been submitted over the last couple of weeks. So the applications can be found on our website, or you can email any of us and we can get you an application. But so my answer is yes, there's funds available, but move fast if you have a project planned.
Yeah, we had almost 7 projects. As you know, our new fiscal year begins July 1st, and there's a line of people waiting for that, which again, with COVID and everything, we were pleasantly surprised to see the investment is continuing. So we have a smaller budget this year due to COVID, but we do have some backup resources. The board will have to weigh in on whether or not more resources can be allocated for that this year based on demand, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But Alicia is correct. There is no shortage of interest in those programs, and if you have a project, please reach out soon.
So the next question is, how is DDP assisting River Action with the first bridge project? And I know that this has been a discussion that we'd like to weave into the master plan for sure, but Kyle, do you have anything else specifically with that project?
I mean, that's been a long time coming. Our biggest role is from that master planning point of view. I think we wanted to make sure that our planners knew it was planned to be there, that it gets built into the fabric of the network of bike trails and walking trails. If we have a more specific role in that, I would imagine it would be one of maintenance, that if it were to be built, we would, sweep it up, clean it up, make sure like it would be on Tony's crew's path of places that stayed beautiful. So that would likely be our role if it gets completed.
So speaking of master plan, we were asked what are our thoughts on collaborating with Visit Quad Cities in the tourism master plan, specific to the downtown recommendations.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody has read that beautiful document that Dave and his team made at Visit Quad Cities, but that master plan is phenomenal. It's very well written. It's very well researched. There's data galore in it. We will be leaning very heavily on that as we explore branding of the region, and as we eventually emerge from COVID and the world looks a little more normal and visitors can come and go freely. We're very excited to work with them and engage in alternating currents and other regional events. So if you haven't heard of this or you haven't seen it, you should go to their site and look it up. It's a great document, and we will absolutely be at the table with that team as that can finally really be worked once things get better.
So the next question I think we'll go to is asking about if it's possible to have closed streets to allow for outdoor dining, kind of creating a ped mall similar to Iowa City or downtown Rock Island. I know we had an example on one of the slides.
So the short answer is yes. I think we can do temporary closures like that. I would caution just permanently shutting down streets. We've learned that over time, cutting off any kind of access fully may not be the best. It works in Iowa City because of the orientation of their downtown suits it. I don't believe our grid downtown does. But I think we absolutely could do special events where we close one lane or all lanes for a certain period of time for events. If you saw back in that slide that Alicia mentioned, there are places that just shut down the parking lane for a certain space or window of time and provide outdoor seating. So the short answer is yes. I just don't think it looks maybe quite like you thought. And there is infrastructure that you can build so that when you do events like that, you have some permanent infrastructure to make that better. So I'm excited by that, and I do think we need to explore what we can do with it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is just gathering interest from people because, I've been harassing, if you're on our business list, you've received so many questions from me or I ask you to answer a survey. And so we're just trying to assess where the interest is, and if people are getting excited behind something, we'll be your advocate and we'll go for it. But as you dream things up, just communicate them with us and we'll figure it out. Do we have a timeline for K-Square?
Yeah, so I know K-Square has been a long one. Just last Wednesday, council approved the funding for that project. It could still change depending on how the bids come in, on what little bits and pieces of it may have to alter to hit that budget number, but those bids should be in very soon with the funding approved at this point, and I would hope that we could still do construction this year. I know that that's challenging, and I'm sure someone at a department somewhere at City Hall is sweating as I say that because it's so unpredictable with construction. But the goal is to get that thing going and to get it done this year. Council approved it 10-0. while there's work to do, I see no reason why it couldn't begin this year.
Jason, this is something I think you can answer because we've been exploring this. How is the idea of offering to-go cups for downtown Davenport? It's a great idea, so the businesses would love to see it happen.
Yeah, so this is something that we're exploring right now, and we've met with staff at City Hall, and just make sure that we know if there are any hurdles that we need to overcome. And I think we've kind of worked that out a little bit. We're going to be putting together a proposal on that and getting that back to the city and kind of seeing how we can do that. It won't be a permanent thing, but it'll be like for certain events where you'll be able to hopefully walk from liquor license to liquor license on the sidewalk for some events. So we're working on that, and we're hoping to be able to roll that out yet this year, but no guarantees quite yet. We still have to kind of get all of our ducks in a row.
Yeah, I would add that there is a legal mechanism for that to work, where DDP is part of the solution to that, so that there's coverage for insurance between liquor licenses. It is legal. It's been done in Iowa City and Cedar Rapids. We had a great conversation, as Jason said. We just, before we implement that idea at a special event, we got to make sure we do it right. And we may be doing some more events. Jason, do you want to just speak briefly about some of the brainstorming we've been doing about different ways that we look at events going forward?
Yeah, so, throughout the years here downtown, we've done a lot of really large events. We've gone from, we have Street Fest each year. We've had River Roots Live. We've had, some just really big giant events, Red, White, and Boom. But with the changes and, with the things like COVID and the flooding and different things, we've kind of adjusted and done smaller events. We went from River Roots Live to Alternating Currents. We've done some of the drive-through events, here this summer for the businesses downtown. And so we're looking at kind of switching gears a little bit and maybe doing more events that are on a smaller scale to get hopefully spread things out a little bit and get more people engaged in the downtown more often. And that doesn't mean that we're going to get rid of every big event we do, but we think that this might be a good idea to try to spread that out a little bit. And especially if we were able to do this open container event, maybe we'll do 2 or 3 of those a year in different zones of the downtown, or things like that, just to engage people more often.
Yeah, I think block parties, and I think Jason's right. We are reevaluating that, and we're excited to see where some of these new ideas go on the events and promotions front.
So we have time for a couple more, I think. So, Kyle, I don't know if you have an update on this, but do you know the status of the Mississippi Plaza building? It's a cornerstone of downtown.
Yeah, Mississippi Plaza is still open for lease right now. We recognize that the loss of those employees hurt everybody, hurt restaurants, hurt just the vibe in general. It is a very important building. There are some plans in place to potentially rehab that building as a different use. It could still be office. It could be some portion residential. It's up in the air. So the property owner is still working on that, and we've been doing our best to try and help out in that regard. But I think it's a good example of it's going to be a team effort to try and fill a building like that. And we have work to do on the development front. We're working very closely with our chamber business growth staff to try and provide leads and work with the realtors to find whoever we can. Obviously, office is a challenge downtown. We're aware of that, although we have had a good year from small offices. And with COVID, it may be the norm going forward that you don't see very many big 20, 30,000 square foot users anymore. We've been pretty successful with 3,000 to 5,000, 2,500 square foot users. We plugged a bunch of those in this year, as you kind of saw earlier on our slides. So office is going to get weird over the next 10 years. It's going to be a whole new world, and we're going to have to be quick on our feet to adjust to it. And the Mississippi Plaza building is one example of why that's so important.
One more development related question. Do you have any insight to what's happening across the street from the Quad City Times?
Yeah, so that is there's two different directions that someone could be asking, the old Howard Johnson site, and then you have to the north where the YMCA is going. So the old Hojo site is particularly challenging, both from a flooding perspective, and there are environmental challenges underground at that site that have made it very difficult to develop. We are we wanted it as badly as anybody to see a new development there. There are still plans in the works. There are a couple of ideas on how we can still make that work. The ground can be dealt with. The place can be adjusted to deal with those challenges. So it's not impossible to develop that site. It's just hard. And the last 2 years have been so tough environmentally in general that it just has really slowed that down. So we haven't taken our eye off that. We know it's an important site. It's a gateway to downtown that really needs improved, and we'll get there. I hear you. That it's been much harder than anticipated.
Okay, and so then the last question is related to alternating currents. I don't know if Jason, you want to just talk a little bit about our plans are obviously we're pivoting constantly, trying to figure out the way to do this. But do you have social distancing guidelines in place? What's the COVID-19 plan?
Well, obviously we're monitoring, what the states and county officials are telling us, and what those guidelines are. We're going to, follow those and recommend those for all the attendees that are going to come. We are going to be doing a few more things outdoors this year to try to give people a little more space and they can spread out and social distance appropriately. Obviously, we can't do everything outdoors, and if weather is an issue, that we'll put a few more things inside. But we're going to recommend that people wear masks when they can, and social distance, and wash their hands, and do all those things that we're being told to do right now. We'll just monitor everything very closely, and as this evolves, we will take the appropriate actions based on the health requirements at the time.
The other thing that I don't think we've mentioned yet is that we're encouraging people to spread out, not just within downtown, but AC is taking a regional approach this year.
Yes, so alternating currents, when it was started, I mean, the very big, broad overview of that idea was that this would become a regional event. With some of the other downtowns having events that are being canceled and postponed, we thought this might be a good idea and good time to take some of those events and maybe put them in alternating currents weekend and make it a regional event. So we're excited about that. Bettendorf will be a part of that, downtown Rock Island, downtown Moline. And so I think this is the start to something that could really grow into a great regional event and be something that people are traveling to from outside this region for quite a ways.
All right, that's all the time we have for questions. So thanks, crew. I'm going to kick it back over to Kyle to close out today's program.
Yeah, I just want to close out and give a very sincere and heartfelt thank you. I know many of you are very close friends of mine personally, and of people in our office. I've got my own small business. We all don't know where our next dollar is coming from. We don't know what's safe some days. We don't know how long this is going to last. We all are worried about loans and what we owe and who is coming and who is not, and confidence in the market. But the truth is, I wouldn't rather be in the trenches with anybody but you guys. The downtown community is a community. We are people that know each other, that look out for each other. The business-to-business assistance during the flood was proof of that. The amount of cooperation that I've seen throughout this whole COVID thing of people just trying to help each other out, just trying to survive. We appreciate all that you've done. We appreciate all that you continue to invest in. DDP and the Chamber will continue to try and create as much certainty in an uncertain world that we can, and try to drive people into this downtown and make sure that it's the best damn downtown we can make it. We have come so far, and this city has seen so much over its couple of 100-year history. This will be a really memorable chapter, but I remain confident that we'll come out on the other side, and it'll be because of the work of the people that are on this call and the blood, sweat, and tears that you've all put into it. So thank you, and we will see you next time. Take care.